it's not always that we get incredibly clear technical analysis that leads us to a very nice target, a reversal target. And in this instance, on the macro, which is even more special for Bitcoin and crypto markets in general, on the macro, we're getting a pretty clear picture. If we want to have that question, which is how bad can it get? This video will answer that question, at least from my perspective, at least how I see things. So let's jump into it. I came across Benjamin Cohen. He had this tweet kind of laying out the year before Bitcoin halving. What happened in the months leading into the Bitcoin halving? He tweeted, as I previously mentioned, the return on investment of Bitcoin in July of pre-halving years was 4.74. The return of Bitcoin in July 2023 ended up being 4.09, very close. For what it's worth, the average return of Bitcoin in August of its pre-halving year is negative 21.3%. That's pretty brutal average in August. And so as we step into August today, as I do this video, we have bearish setups happening on the Bitcoin chart. We cannot ignore. This video isn't to say it's definitely going to happen. We can talk about the case for higher low support. We can talk about maybe Bitcoin diverges from this, but I think it's extremely good and smart to be prepared for downside targets, especially in Bitcoin, because when we're talking about the target that we're about to look at, it's just a higher low on the macro, and it's not necessarily a bad thing when we zoom out on this Bitcoin chart. Just like if we zoom out, and even we can take, and I'll get my brush. I was going to say we can take this higher low. This wasn't a bad thing. Big dip for Bitcoin, and notice the months this happened: September, August, October. That big dip. This is not necessarily a bad thing on the macro. Even as we look back today, trading at $28,000, the COVID dip wasn't a bad thing. And look at that. That came out of nowhere. So let's talk about the targets. Let's talk about how the targets could really play into what Benjamin over here kind of put out from a data perspective. I think it's extremely helpful information. And then let's talk about what we have going on. So here's Bitcoin. This is the daily chart. We've been tracking on this YouTube channel this very clear rising wedge that Bitcoin has kind of been in. It's higher highs, higher lows. We got this breakout to the upside. Another breakout to the upside, failed, right? And we're still just consolidating really in this pattern. And you have this upper trend line now, this yellow. It's kind of a larger macro rising wedge that Bitcoin is in. If we're taking this white one that we've been tracking, it's just a very clear target to the downside. It's just above $20,000 to $21,000. Now I'm going to explain to you why that's so notable for Bitcoin. If we go over to the weekly chart, I just want to point something out. If we're really trying to track higher low support on a macro in terms of cycles as we lead into the next halving, which is this white line over here, we take our Fibonacci from the swing low to swing high. And what do we have down there? We have the 618 around 21,500, the 786 around $19,000. So on this macro chart, which is an incredibly powerful just roadmap for all of crypto, we have the case where Bitcoin could have a pretty bad August, maybe even September and October. And I should note, I didn't do the exact math on this. I'm sure Benjamin will eventually, but September doesn't look like it's a good month either historically in the year leading into halving. So this could be the case. Not only August, but the next couple months could just be brutal for crypto. And if we go back to this chart, it could be a case, and this isn't a guarantee, that Bitcoin and cryptos fall. What does this look like from, and we can go back to the daily chart to analyze this. What does this look like from a target perspective, price range perspective? If we're hitting an exact target of say 20,500 or so, we're looking at just around 29% to the downside. That's pretty brutal. And it also lines up pretty nicely with Benjamin's tweet over here, the average being around negative 21%. So that would be even more brutal. The question is, would Bitcoin get there? Or would Bitcoin maybe see support around 21,500, right? What would that look like? Now, I want to talk about on the daily chart for this not to happen, because there's always the case for that, right? So the things that I'm going to be watching for, really a couple things. Obviously, the structure that we have, it's higher low structure at the lower trend line, you can see. So what I mean by that is there's this consolidation before liftoff. There's a higher low. Here's another higher low. Right now, obviously, as we're especially at the apex of this rising wedge, we're wondering, are we going to get a higher low support around 28,000? And Bitcoin does not have that much time left to prove support, right? It's $800 away from where Bitcoin is right now. Remember, breakout target is down here around $21,000, $20,000 to $21,000. The time frame on that could be anything. We could break out of this, pull back up. We could see the brutal September, right? September could be the really bad month. So time frame wise, nobody knows if we were to fall to this Fibonacci and this target, but the case is there. If support holds, what am I looking for? Well, we have support at the lower trend line. We also have the 200-day moving average here. Right now, it's around $26,000 to $27,000. Notice how Bitcoin has seen support here back in March. Bitcoin might break out of this lower trend line, kind of get a fake breakout, similar to what we got to the upside, a little fake breakout to the downside, touching the 200, but that would have to happen quickly. Otherwise, the 200, if Bitcoin doesn't break out soon, the 200 will likely be pulled into Bitcoin at this confluent area of support at this lower trend line, where the support now becomes even more important because we have the 200-day, which has been pulled into this lower trend line. So we have double support, and Bitcoin really urgently would be needing to kind of hold that support, not breaking that double support, that confluent support that's there. The other thing over on the weekly I really wanted to mention, because this is something I'll be watching. This is the new CCV Smart Wave. It's a quicker moving oscillator you see here in the middle of the screen. It's this histogram. There's two things that I'm waiting to see that will happen. I want to first note, when you're looking at that green on the histogram, this nice little green, you can see we've hit overbought, right? And now it's time for consolidation on this weekly chart. And this is a weekly chart. Just the histogram falling is not a bearish thing. That's for me a sign of consolidation. And by the way, everybody, if you want to try this CCV Smart Wave, you can get it along with all the other chart prime indicators in the link below. But just coming down is not what I'm really necessarily watching for. I think that's definitely going to happen now, right? We're going to consolidate one way or the other. What I'm watching for is, as it's coming down, and we can kind of go back here in the bull market really, as it's coming down, is it staying green? Or as it's coming down out of that overbought, is it turning purple? Notice pre-halving, and even in this range of August, September, October, even a touch of November, you can see the histogram was coming down and it was purple, right? And that purple has a lot to do with moving averages, namely this 20-week moving average. You can just see, we want to see, and we've talked about this a lot, this green line, we want to see the 20-week moving average support on Bitcoin, because when it fails, what happens? We're really starting to see this strong downtrend in price and this histogram turning purple. Notice something, and just this is another example with this histogram. You can see in the previous halving in 2016, right? Bitcoin was consolidating in a very similar time frame area on this histogram. It was consolidating down, but look, it stayed green. And what happened? We just kind of consolidated sideways above that 20-week. That's the bullish move that we're looking for right now. But we're at this critical area where it may or may not happen. And this is what I'm watching for, especially as we kind of take this data over here that Benjamin tweeted out, and we take it onto the Bitcoin chart and we say, okay, historically, we've seen downtrend in August, right? And we could see a break to the downside. That's not to sit here and say it definitely happens. But if we fail at this support here and we start breaking down, I think it's good to be prepared. It's not that far away. $28,000 Bitcoin to like $21,000. That's if you've been in crypto long enough, that's really not that much, right? It's such a normal move from a macro perspective. We see it time and time again, to the upside, to the downside, to the downside, to the upside. This happens all the time. So it's just smart to be prepared for that. And I say this within context of all of crypto, because if Bitcoin's doing that, altcoins are probably putting in their ultimate lows of this bear cycle, and it could get very rough over the next 2 months. But for me, from a cycle perspective, especially now as the Bitcoin halving really does start getting closer, this is that, and I did a video on this the other day, this time frame before the next halving, this is where things get so crucial from a mental mindset, because we are getting close, in my opinion, to flip bullish. And it's that last part, that in between the seasons of winter and summer, winter and spring, just the wait can be a little brutal, but we're getting close. So that's all my perspective, everybody. I wanted to lay out that data. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I appreciate you. I hope you're having an amazing day. I'll see you in the next video. God bless.